Right. So our next session is one of my favorites because it's one of my favorite characters that we've been diving into is Sherlock Holmes. So Phil's coming back with some more Sherlock Holmes this week. So I did look up a few Sherlock facts, and I thought that it was kind of interesting that one of his most popular phrases, which is "elementary, my dear Watson," was never said in a single sentence. So it was he did say elementary, and he did say "my dear Watson" a lot, but he never said "elementary, my dear Watson." So I thought that that was a fun one to remember as we get into a study in Scarlet with Phil, that we will not actually hear that, but we may hear elementary or my dear Watson. So Phil, where did we leave off?
You know what? I might just throw that in somewhere just cause.
It is a fun. You know, another one that you might thought was interesting was that he was almost named Sharonford, but
I did not know that.
He changed, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle changed the name, perhaps because there were well-known Nottingham cricketers named Sherwin and Shacklock, and the author was a big fan, so he thinks that he kind of made the Sherlock name from that. So interesting Sherlock stuff, and I heard that there was lots of Sherlock-esque deductive reasoning going on in Columbus yesterday. I got a call.
Oh yeah, we quite.
I got a call from Aaron, and there was a little bit of a mystery in Columbus yesterday, if you guys weren't aware. And so we called upon. I told Aaron when we were doing mystery solving that we should definitely include Phil and Bianca because they're our forefront deductive reasoners. So I heard that you all played a vital role in the mystery of Columbus on Monday. So
I played very little role because I was driving a bus, but Bianca, she solved that thing.
That's excellent. So we can have the new remake of Sherlock will be Sherlock and Bianca rather than Sherlock and Watson. Yeah. I think that would be good. So.
Although before we get into it, since you brought it up and you're talking about obscure Sherlock facts, deductive reasoning. We all have heard, those of us that are Sherlock fans, that that's how, and Sherlock says it, he'll say it in a little while in this story, that he uses deductive reasoning. That's how he solves his crimes. He does not use deductive reasoning. I know
where you're going with this.
At all.
Yeah.
Generally, we talk about inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. Inductive, we take a bunch of little facts and we put them all together, and that tells us what truth is. Deductive, we got a great big idea, and we say, well, that fits in this specific case. We deduce the specific from the big thing. Sherlock doesn't do either of those. Sherlock is what we call adductive reasoning, where you take a bunch of stuff together and create a story that's plausible, but may not be the case. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But you just hold a bunch of stuff together and figure out some kind of theory. Which I find all this kind of what's real and what's truth to always be fascinating. So let's just jump right into where we're at. So they're just about to go see the place, discussing between Watson and Sherlock what the shortcomings are, what they're, who gets irritated. They both smoke really strong pipe tobacco. There's chemicals about and weird experiments, and you can be up all night. On the part of Sherlock, Watson doesn't seem to be a problem with that. So let's get right on that. And we're going to have Sherlock is about to describe his own personality and why that might irritate people. Let me see. What are my other shortcomings? I get in the dumps at times and don't open my mouth for days on end. You must not think I am sulky when I do that. Just let me alone and I'll soon be all right. One of you to confess now. It's just as well for two fellows to know the worst of one another before they begin to live together. So Sherlock saying, sometimes I'm just not going to talk to anybody for days. I will ignore you completely. I am not depressed. I just don't want to talk to anybody, and it'll be fine. After a few days, I'll probably talk to you again. Don't get upset about it. Don't worry. You don't need to do anything. But what are your problems? Because if we're going to live together, we all know everybody's issues first. What's going to irritate us about each other? We need to talk about this. And Watson responds, I laughed at this cross-examination. I keep a bullpup, I said. And I object to rows because my nerves are shaken. I get up at all sorts of ungodly hours, and I am extremely lazy. I have another set of vices when I'm well, but those are the principal ones at present. One says, well, I got a dog. So if you don't like dogs, that's a problem. And I don't want to fight about anything. I don't want to ever hear you argue at me because I got bad nerves from being shot at. And because of that, I don't sleep real well, and I'm up puttering around all through the night, so that might disturb your sleep. And I'm really not going to do anything around the house. I don't do much anything. I got shot in the shoulder, and it's really thrown me. You want somebody to do the dishes, not going to be me. I have a whole lot of other problems, but only when I'm feeling well, and when I'm not so lazy, then I can get into a bunch of other stuff. But since I don't feel that well, don't even need to bring them up. Do you include violin playing in your category of rows? He asked anxiously. One moment. All right, so that doesn't matter that much. All right, so I said, the people playing the violin, is that going to upset you? And Watson says, it depends on the player, I answered. A well-played violin is a treat for the gods. A badly played one. And Sherlock interrupts. Oh, that's all right, he cried with a merry laugh. I think we may consider the thing as settled. That is, if the rooms are agreeable to you. So Watson says, look, everybody likes a good violin song. It wouldn't be a song, it's a violin. Good violin piece of music. Just sounds nice, but, it sounds like somebody's beating a cat in a sack if you play the violin badly. And Sherlock, without describing whether he plays well or poorly, just says, never mind. We're going to get on fine. Let's go check out the rooms. And we're definitely going to move in together as long as the rooms are good. Watson replies, when shall we see them? Call for me here to noon tomorrow, and we'll go together and settle everything. All right, noon exactly, I said, shaking his hand. I said, all right, we'll just go out tomorrow at lunchtime. It'll be great. We left him working amongst his chemicals, and we walked together towards my hotel. By the way, I asked suddenly, stopping and turning upon Stamford, how the deuce did he know that I had come from Afghanistan? You remember that Stamford is the guy that introduced Watson and Sherlock. And as Watson and Stamford take off, and they've got the plan for tomorrow, says, hey, didn't he say that I was in Afghanistan? But I didn't mention that. And you said you didn't mention it. How did he possibly know that? Oh, too far. My companion smiled an enigmatical smile. That's just his little peculiarity, he said. A good many people have wanted to know how he finds things out. Nobody knows how he does it. He doesn't tell us. But he does it all the time. You're just going to have to live with it. Oh, a mystery, is it? I cried, rubbing my hands. This is very piquant. I am much obliged to you for bringing us together. The proper study of mankind is man, you know. And so Watson says, oh, we don't know something about? I love studying people. I'm a doctor, so of course I love studying people. I studied their insides for years in medical school, but I like studying how they work together and think as well. You must study him then, Stamford said as he bade me goodbye. You'll find him a naughty problem, though. I'll wager he learns more about you than you about him. Goodbye. Goodbye, I answered, and strolled on to my hotel, considerably interested in my new acquaintance. So Stanford says, yeah, if you're interested, he's an interesting guy, so definitely check him out. But I'm telling you, he's really clever, and he will figure stuff out. And Watson proceeds on into his hotel, spends the night, gets up the next morning in chapter 2. We met next day as he had arranged and inspected the rooms at number 221B Baker Street, of which he had spoken at our meeting. They consisted of comfortable bedrooms and a single large airy sitting room, cheerfully furnished, illuminated by 2 broad windows. They get in there, and 221B Baker Street is a famous address because that's where Sherlock and Watson live. So it's in books, it's in movies, it's everywhere. It's in the TV show House, who lives at 222, I believe, one off. And they never say it's Baker Street, but there are a lot of commonalities between Dr. House and Sherlock Holmes. And so they've got one room for everybody, a bedroom for each of them, and it's already furnished, so they don't have to worry about buying furniture. This was very much how lodgings would work at that time. You would just move into a place with a bunch of stuff, unless you were getting an entire house. Even then, sometimes. So desirable in every way were the apartments, and so moderate did the terms seem when divided between us. The bargain for in the place, and they said, this place is awesome. And if we're both paying, it's really cheap. We're totally getting this place right now. They fork over the money, and they say, boom, we've got it, and they're in. That very evening, I moved my things round from the hotel, and on the following morning, Sherlock Holmes followed me with several boxes and portmanteaus. So they leave. Watson goes right to his hotel, grabs all his stuff, and moves in. By the next morning, Sherlock's bringing all his stuff in. They are moving in quick. For a day or two, we were busily employed.
I think we lost you there for a minute, Phil. Let me make sure you're still. Oh, I think Phil is frozen. I think he's coming back online right now, so let's give him a. There you go. Did I get you?
All right, can everybody pretty much hear me? Because you guys
We
look frozen
can.
again. We got a big storm here, and I think it's screwing everything up.
Either that, or we know what Nick thinks has happened, and Chuck Norris has roundhouse kicked the internet in Columbus. So
That seems. All right, so let's jump right back in. So everybody moved in by the next morning, and we'll continue on that. I assume I got that bit. For a day or two, we were busily employed in unpacking and laying out our property to the best advantage. That done, we gradually began to settle down and to accommodate ourselves to our new surroundings. They take a couple of days, and they're unpacking everything and putting stuff where they want it. And then after that, I don't know if you've moved before, but moving's tough. Getting everything sorted is tough. And even after you get everything where you want it, then you got to get you in the right relationship to all your stuff where it is now. Figure out where stuff is and how you turn, things like that. They're getting used to that. Holmes was certainly not a difficult man to live with. He was quiet in his ways and his habits were regular. It was rare for him to be up after 10 at night, and he'd invariably breakfasted and gone out before I rose in the morning. This is why Holmes makes a great roommate. He doesn't make a bunch of noise, and when he's puttering around, like making stuff in the kitchen or whatever, he doesn't bang all over the place. Keeps himself relaxed. And he keeps to a schedule. So you always know where he's going to be, and he's not going to surprise you. He doesn't stay up real late. And what's nice when you have a roommate is that when you get up in the morning, they're already out of the house, and you don't have to put up with them first thing in the morning. And that's how Sherlock is. He is gone. Sometimes he spent his day at the chemical laboratory, sometimes in the dissecting rooms, and occasionally in long walks, which appeared to take him into the lowest portions of the city. Nothing could exceed his energy when the working fit was upon him, but now and again a reaction would seize him, and for days on end he would lie upon the sofa in the sitting room, hardly uttering a word or moving a muscle from morning to night. So Sherlock had warned Watson about this before. He says, sometimes I just lie around, I'm not going to talk to anybody, don't get upset about it. So Watson's saying that Sherlock has his things that he does when he's out. He's down at the university hospital, doing his education there in the lab, or beating corpses with a riding crop, as we'd seen yesterday. So he'll go out and do this stuff, and he just does it all day. Just works and works. And then all of a sudden, for several days, he doesn't do anything at all. Just lays on the couch, doesn't move, doesn't talk to anybody. On these occasions, I've noticed such a dreamy, vacant expression in his eyes that I might have suspected him of being addicted to the use of some narcotic, had not the temperance and cleanliness of his whole life forbidden such a notion. This guy, Sherlock, is so out of it, and Watson says, he's got to be on drugs. Except he just doesn't seem in any way to seem like a drug addict. He's always clean about it. He doesn't get up to anything wild. Couldn't be on drugs. As the weeks went by, my interest in him and my curiosity as to his aims in life gradually deepened and increased. His very person and appearance were such as to strike the attention of the most casual observer. Watson saying, yeah, we get to know each other longer, not so much better. The longer we know each other, the more I want to know about this Sherlock guy. I was just about his brain. You even just look at him. He looks like a person that if you'd see him on the street, you would want to know more about him. In height, he was rather over 6 feet and so excessively lean that he seemed to be considerably taller. His eyes were sharp and piercing, save during those intervals of torpor to which I have alluded, and his thin, hawk but a little on average. He's well over 6 feet tall, real tall guy. And like me, myself, he's really, really thin. So looks taller than he actually is. I am not tall at all, but I tend to seem taller in a lot of situations. Not, however, when I'm standing next to a taller person. And he's got sharp, piercing eyes. So that will grab attention. And he's got a real thin nose that points out in front of him. I don't know why a thin, pointy nose makes you look like you're alert, but that is the impression that Watson got. His chin, too, had the prominence and squareness which mark a man of determination. His hands were invariably blotted with ink and stained with chemicals, but he was possessed of an extraordinary delicacy of touch, as I frequently had occasion to observe when I watched him manipulating his fragile philosophical instruments. So he got a big square jaw. Classically, even today, that is a forthright and determined person with a square jaw. Not really, but people think you can read all sorts of emotions and qualities into facial features. You can't. We talked about earlier in the last chapter, he's covered in chemicals all the time and ink. My hands are often covered in ink, but not chemicals. And we know that he's really strong from when he grabbed Watson the other day. But he says his hands are very delicate as well. He can do that. He notices that, Watson notices that because Sherlock is manipulating philosophical instruments. So this is not philosophy as in, I think, therefore I am, Plato, Descartes, Socrates. At this time, philosophy just means science, which is all the word means. It's just the love of knowledge. So when he's playing around with the scientific instruments, he does it very delicately. So he can get exactly the right reading of whatever sort. The reader may set me down as a hopeless busybody when I confess how much this man stimulated my curiosity, and how often I endeavored to break through the reticence which he showed on all that concerned himself. Because look, I know I'm spending a lot of time thinking about this guy, paying attention to him, and you might think I'm kind of a creep, particularly because I spend all this time trying to get him to talk about and explain what he's thinking and what he's going to do with his life, and he doesn't like to talk about that stuff. Before pronouncing judgment, however, be it remembered how objectless was my life, how little there was to engage my attention. My health forbade me from venturing out unless the weather was exceptionally genial, and I had no friends who would call upon me and break the monotony of my day focusing on the Sherlock guy way too much. But, I just got shot, and then I got real sick, and I'm still recovering. I don't have any friends. I don't have anything to do. I don't have a job. I'm just kind of lying around. I can't go out and do anything. Under these circumstances, I eagerly hailed the little mystery which hung around my companion and spent much of my time in endeavoring to unravel it. The only thing I have to do is figure out who the Sherlock guy is, so I am spending all my time doing exactly that. He was not studying medicine. He had himself, in reply to a question, confirmed Stanford's opinion upon that point. So he is at a teaching hospital, but he's not trying to be a doctor. Stanford had said, I don't think he's doing medicine with all the weird courses he takes. But Sherlock himself at least will say as much as, I am not trying to be a doctor. Neither did he appear to have pursued any course of reading which might fit him for a degree in science or any other recognized portal which would give him an entrance into the learned world. In the United Kingdom, England in particular, you don't study a major or study a degree, you read your degree. You don't actually, you do a lot of reading, but that's just what they call the studying and what courses you take. And Watson's looking around and I'm like, none of this makes any sense together. You're obviously not going for a degree. Yet his zeal for certain studies was remarkable. And within eccentric limits, his knowledge was so extraordinarily ample and minute that his observations have fairly astounded me. Surely no man would work so hard or attain such precise information unless he had some definite end in view. He studies all kinds of weird stuff that doesn't make sense altogether, but he studies it really hard. Right? He knows everything about this one bizarre thing and this other thing which is totally unconnected with it. He knows lots about those things. And there's no way he doesn't have a plan with what he's doing, even if I don't know what it is. A little further down. That's good. Desultory readers are seldom remarkable for the exactness of their learning. No man burdens his mind with small matters unless he has some very good reason for doing so. This guy knows such obscure trivia about the weirdest things. There's no way he doesn't have a point for knowing those things. His ignorance was as remarkable as his knowledge. So he might know all these really bizarre things, all different ways, but there's a whole bunch of stuff he doesn't know, and that's just as amazing of what he doesn't know. Contemporary literature, philosophy, and politics, he appeared to know next to nothing. Upon my quoting Thomas Carlyle, he inquired in the naivest way who he might be and what he had done. He doesn't know anything that's going on in the world of books. He doesn't know who the prime minister is, which is like saying he doesn't know who the president is. He doesn't care. doesn't know what people are talking about and thinking in the news, like anything in the news. Sherlock doesn't know any of that. My surprise reached a climax, however, when I found incidentally that he was ignorant of the Copernican theory and of the composition of the solar system. That any civilized human being in this 19th century should not be aware that the Earth traveled around the sun appeared to be, to me, such an extraordinary fact that I could hardly realize it. And so what's weirdest is this guy has no idea that the Earth revolves around the sun. That is just bizarre. There's no way I can understand that a human being in today's age doesn't know that the Earth goes around the sun. You appear to be astonished, he said to Sherlock, smiling at my expression of surprise. Now that I do know it, I shall do my best to forget it. What, to forget it? Sherlock says, yeah, you think that's weird, but I don't want to know that. Now that you've told me that, I'm going to do everything I can to not know that. And Watson says, what, why? Why would you want to not know that? You see, he explained, I consider that a man's brain originally is like a little empty attic. You have to stock it with such furniture as you choose. A fool takes in all the lumber of every sort that he comes across, so that the knowledge might be as a difficulty in laying his hands upon it. So Sherlock says, look, you've only got so much room in your brain for information. And if you just take in anything, like this weird idea that the Earth goes around the sun, then it's just going to clutter up the stuff you do need to live your life and do what it is you want to do. Even if it doesn't crowd everything out, and you've got room for the stuff you want, you've got all this stuff that doesn't matter to you. And you're going to have to sort through that to remember the important stuff. Now, the skillful workman is very careful indeed as to what he takes into his brain attic. He will have nothing but the tools which may help him in doing his work. But of these, he has a large assortment, and all in the most perfect order. It is a mistake to think that the little room has elastic walls and can distend to any extent. Alex says, if you know what you're doing, when you're sorting your brain out and remembering stuff, you're going to make sure that everything in there is focused on the thing that you are focused on yourself. Whatever your job is, whatever your goal in life, everything in your brain has to be about that one thing and nothing else. But it needs to be everything about that one thing. Because you can't fit everything in. Your brain doesn't expand forever. Depend upon it. There comes a time when for every addition of knowledge, you forget something that you knew before. This is of the highest importance. I said, look, if you learn something new, it's going to drive out old stuff. If you learn something that is useless, then it's going to drive out something you really need. So don't only learn stuff and remember stuff that you know you actually need. But the solar system, I protested. What the deuce is it to me? He interrupted impatiently. You say that we go around the sun. If we went around the moon, it would not make a pennyworth of difference to me or to my work. And Watson says, come on, this is important. The solar system is where we live. Sherlock says, it doesn't matter what we go around. It in no way affects my life. If we go around the sun, if the sun goes around us, if we go around the moon, none of it has any impact whatsoever on my life and how I live it. I was on the point of asking him what that work might be, but something in his manner showed me that the question would be an unwelcome one. I pondered over our short conversation, however, and endeavored to draw my deductions from it. So Watson is saying, he just mentioned what his work is and what his goal in life, why he's taking all these weird courses, learns all this weird stuff. I should ask him. He doesn't look like he wants to answer that question right now. I'll just hang on. But I'm going to think about all this stuff he said and try and figure it out. He said that he would acquire no knowledge which did not bear upon his object, Therefore, all the knowledge which he possessed was such as would be useful to him. I enumerated in my own mind all the various points upon which he had shown me that he was exceptionally well informed. I even took a pencil and jotted them down. I could not help smiling at the document when I had completed it. It ran this way. It was, look, so he said, you can only remember and know the stuff that's really important for your goal. So whatever he knows must be important to his goal. Anything he doesn't know can't be important. So I'll just write all this stuff down that I know he knows, and that will explain what his goal is. Watson calls that deductive reasoning. As we were discussing before, that's inductive. All a bunch of little tiny things make a big idea from it. So he gets his list and then he writes it down. It looks like this. Sherlock Holmes, his limits. Knowledge of literature, nil. Philosophy, nil. Astronomy, nil. Politics, feeble. Botany, variable. Let me slow down. Okay, so nil means nothing. Feeble means weak. He knows nothing about reading and books. He knows nothing about how people think and how people decide what's a good thing to do or not in philosophy. He didn't know anything about anything off the planet, the stars, or the sun, moon. He didn't know anything about politics, a little bit, but very, very little. Botany, variable. Well up in belladonna, opium, and poisons generally. Knows nothing of practical gardening. So when you're talking about plants, Sherlock Holmes does not know how to keep a houseplant alive or to grow something out in the garden at all. No idea. I know what soil would be good for what kind of plant stuff. But plants that make poisons and drugs and things like this, he knows all about them. Geology, practical but limited. Tells at a glance different soils from each other. After walks, has shown me splashes upon his trousers and told me by their color and consistence in what part of London he had received them. I said, well, yeah, he knows about rocks and dirt and stuff, and he knows weird stuff about it. Like he can see a stain from dirt and says, oh, this came from a specific corner in the city. I know where that is from, just by looking at it. Chemistry, profound. Anatomy, accurate, but unsystematic. He knows tons about chemistry, on anatomy, how the human body is put together. He knows lots about the human body, but it doesn't make sense together. And Watson, as a medical doctor, certainly understands the human body as a system that all works together. Sherlock does not. Sensational literature, immense. He appears to know every detail of every horror perpetrated in the century. So all these tabloid literature, basically, especially about crimes and murders and horrible things like that. That Sherlock knows. He knows it really well. Plays the violin well. Is an expert single stick player, boxer, and swordsman. Has a good practical knowledge of British law. He plays the violin, so has some artistic things and does it well. And he can fight in different ways, in different styles. Single stick is a thing just smacking people with your cane, basically. And then boxing and sword fighting, you know those. There's a good practical knowledge of the law. He's not a lawyer. He's not a legislator, a politician, somebody who writes laws, but he understands how the law works. When I got so far in my list, I threw it in the fire in despair. If I can only find what the fellow is driving at by reconciling all these accomplishments and discovering a college which needs them all, I said to myself, I may as well give up the attempt at once. Oh, I look at all this stuff and none of this stuff makes sense together. Who would want to know all this stuff and not know this other stuff? It doesn't make any sense to me. Up there, there we go. I see that I have alluded above to his powers upon the violin. These were very remarkable, but as eccentric as all his other accomplishments. That he could play pieces, and difficult pieces, I knew well, because at my request, he has played me some of Mendelssohn's Lieder, and other favorites. I said, look, he is a great violinist. He can play all sorts of famous pieces. I'll just request him and he'll just pull them out, and he does them really well. When left to himself, however, he would seldom produce any music or attempt any recognized air. Leaning back in his armchair of an evening, he would close his eyes and scrape carelessly on the fiddle, which was thrown across his knee. He says, unless I requested a song, not a song, a lead, a musical piece. Actually, I guess Mendelssohn's leader would be songs, because they're lead, which means song in German. So anyway, he'll play requests, and he plays them really well. But if you don't request something, he just kind of makes noise on it. Sits in his chair, doesn't play any songs, just makes noise. Sometimes the chords were sonorous and melancholy. Occasionally, they were fantastic and cheerful. Clearly, they reflected the thoughts which possessed him. But whether the music aided those thoughts, or whether the playing was simply the result of a whim or fancy, was more than I could determine. I might have rebelled against these exasperating solos, had it not been that he usually terminated them by playing in quick succession a whole series of my favorite airs as a slight compensation for the trial upon my patient. He just makes those noises, and not tuneless. I mean, he's making sounds that make sense, that sound nice, sometimes happy sounds, sometimes sad sounds. It all depends on what he feels like right then. But Watson isn't sure. Does he feel sad and then he plays a sad sound? Or does he play sad sounds and that makes him feel sad? Watson has no idea. And it's kind of irritating just to hear random violin sounds. But he does a lot of nice things. And when he gets done with that, he plays a bunch of stuff that I really like to listen to. So that's all right. I can definitely forgive him for that. And
All right. It looks like we had another roundhouse kick sighting of Chuck Norris to the Columbus internet. So I apologize for that. But who can stop that? So that is, that's all we have for the Sherlock thing. With Sherlock, he is such a interesting, creative character, and I can't wait to hear what him and Watson get into next week. So I will be back at the top of the hour with our final session for the day. We have a really cool one where we're going to meet up with a step group in Heath. So we'll see you guys soon, and I'll let you guys socialize until then. We'll be right back.